Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please do be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Zarinah Hameen. She is here to celebrate the Melanoid Chronicles. Before we invite Zarinah into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Becoming America, the award-winning middle grade historical fiction series by Antoinette Trulio Martin. This series takes you back to the Lower East Side of New York in 1911, where millions of immigrants begin their American story. Spunky Lily Taglia and her friends must skirt around old world traditions and face oppression, bigotry, and dangerous streets as history unfolds. This fantastic series gives you a great look at what immigration was like in the early 1900s and what it might still look like for many immigrants today. The series is a great addition to any family library. It's Becoming America, the award-winning series by Antoinette Trulio Martin. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is also brought to you by Once Upon an Upset, a really powerful podcast for kids and their parents from our friend Jessica Laurel Kane. Once Upon an Upset is a podcast of stories and conversations to help make sense of difficult times. It's great for kids and parents, and it's a great way to start great conversations with kids and parents. The latest episode is called The Tea Party. The Tea Party is a story about the creative ideas people come up with to try to connect with each other when they imagine they're not enough just the way they already are. Check it out today, Once Upon an Upset by Jessica Laurel Kane. It's available at Apple Podcasts. Join us right now from the beautiful city of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. Our guest today is here to celebrate a really important collection of books. It's called the Melanoid Chronicles. Please welcome to the show, Zarinah Hameen. Hey, Zarinah, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you on and really excited to delve deep into the Melanoid Chronicles. Tell us all about this, please.
So the Melanoid Chronicles is an Encyclopedia series, which I know is already ancient. Encyclopedia series. However, I remember it played a very big part in my life growing up as being someone who always wanted knowledge. I was obsessed with it, so I loved having them. So I decided to kind of bring it back to the surface, but do it in a very unique way where, we've seen it playing out in our society a great deal in the last several years. But, with a lot of like racial injustices and things like that, for me, the core of it is always children. That's how you focus. That's how you change the trajectory of things that people are angry about or that they can't understand. So for me, I have a niece. She's not a baby anymore. She's 15. But in my head, she's still a baby. I want her and every other child in her generation to have something that I think is key to changing so much of what's going wrong in our society. So what that is that there's never been, this is the first time ever, it's an encyclopedia series that focuses on Black history in the new millennium. So there's always going to be lost history. So I'll give the perfect example that I actually put on the website. The movie Hidden Figures was so extraordinary and it was so big and it won Oscars. And Katherine Johnson, who is one of the scientists who worked at NASA, she died in 2020. And at that time, she was put into whatever Science Hall of Fame or whatever it is. But 4 years before that, no one knew who she was. Mm-hmm. And so if that movie didn't come out, she would have died with no one knowing the amazing contributions that she made to NASA. So, and for me, it's one of those things where everybody's identity comes from knowing their history. Everyone. I speak to people all the time and they're like, my father was half Greek and he did this and this and this. That is something that's actually unfortunately missing from, and however way you decide to identify yourself, African American, Black history. But the Melanoid Chronicles they aren't just for children of the African diaspora. It's for everyone. It's a lost history. Mm-hmm. So even though everything we've done before now is pretty much, I don't want to say it's all lost. We're still discovering it. I wanted to change that for the next generation, where if you were born from 2000 on, now you have the first data, the first recordings of people who look like you, who have done amazing things, people who, I have it, scientists, engineers, not just media and entertainment. We do have media and entertainment, but science and technology, math, political, government, all of those things. When people are able to incorporate, because it's not incorporated very well into the educational system. Mm-hmm. So when you have people who can actually look at, oh, wow, these people aren't monsters, aren't this, that's the missing piece. And so my generation and on and all of that, I'll be 40 in less than a month. We're still figuring it out, and that's fine. But how about if we have someone now if they are 20 years old or younger, the things and the groundbreaking things that have happened amongst people of the African diaspora or African Americans is now well documented. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Melanoid Chronicles brings together. So it's as speaking as someone of the African diaspora, I know that would have been extremely powerful for me when I was younger. Mm-hmm. To say, oh wow, I didn't even know these people existed and this just happened 5 years ago. Right. So we're not erasing the past, but we're basically looking at it as Black history in the new millennium. Mm.
It's interesting. You talk about the Encyclopedia being this relic almost, because yeah. But it shouldn't be, because we have, we have Google and being able to search and instantaneously find information. The problem with that and the drawback is we need to have an idea of where to start looking. We need to put something into the search engine. And the thing, one of the things that made me fall in love with the Encyclopedia set that I had that was missing, I think, M through N. I'm not sure. There was one edition that was missing.
We were all missing a few, yeah.
But it was something where you could go, and whether it is in the living room or your bedroom or in the bathroom, you could pick up the Encyclopedia and just open up the page, and you would find something new, something that you wouldn't know to have searched for.
Exactly. And that's what the different spin that we did on this is, that instead of the alphabets, like we were just talking about how we all missed a few letters, we broke these volumes down into category. So again, I talk about my niece. She loves science. Like that's her favorite thing on the planet. So there's specifically in each, because the first one is a collector's edition. The other ones will be smaller because we were spanning 20 years. Mm-hmm. So it had to be broken down. So it's broken down into 4 volumes. And she didn't come around. She was born in 2006. She didn't come around to the second volume. But you can go into it and literally just go to science and technology. So whatever your interests are, that's the beauty of, we didn't have that. It was like, okay, A through Z, right. So this time it's like, okay, hey, if she doesn't want to hear about media, entertainment, or politics or whatever, I'm just interested in science. Let me just go to the science place to see it's the science section and see what's available and who's done these amazing things within this field. Yeah. So you're right. If you don't know where to look, you don't know what you're searching for. So what I wanted to do also is I wanted to make sure I didn't exclude dinosaurs like me. So it is available in hard copy, but I also made it available purposely because we are addressing a new generation in ebook. So they might not want to grab a book like we did. A lot of people still do. Trust me. My niece is one of them. But just in case, we decided to go ahead and release it on ebook. So at least it's just on their phones.
Yeah.
And if they're, sitting there at a bus, waiting for the bus for school or whatever, they can just read and they can just look and they can have all the information right there in their palm.
Yeah. What a great gift. I have a choice. I can go on TikTok or I can learn a little bit about my history or the history of the people that live with me.
And the false idea about this generation is that they don't focus, which don't get me wrong, a great deal of them don't. But they're still, it's human nature to search and crave knowledge. Mm-hmm. So there may be some kids that crave it more than others, but it's still there. Yeah. So if they can just go ahead and download an ebook and it's downloaded on their phone, they may not want to sit there for hours, but they can be like, hey, let me check, this and this and this. Or it even works well for your career goals. If you're 18 and you just started college and you want to write a paper on something or you want to do something, if you don't have the hard copy, they can just go, instead of Google, they can go on their phone and say, I already have the document of these people who've done these great things and build from there. So it's basically taking a traditional way of education and matching it with modern technology.
Yeah. What was it now? I get the inspiration, to kind of share your history, to dig deep into your roots and the roots of your family. But to create an encyclopedia, that's a pretty daunting task. I need to know where you got that energy from, because I think I would have sat down and goes, yeah, it's a great idea, but I don't have the time to do that.
Yeah, you know what? That happened several times actually, where I was like, I'm done. I can't do it. And that's an excellent question, because I've told several people I underestimated this task, definitely. So I wanted to originally release it this summer. I underestimated the amount of work, the amount of research. It's so much, especially when I think it'll be easier the next time around, but especially when you're trying to span 20 years. And I'm pretty sure we didn't get everyone, but we definitely tried. We went through everything to find the people who are groundbreaking. So no, it's an understatement to say that it was hard. And that's why it wasn't released this summer. It's like, wow, we have so much work to do here. I had researchers working around the clock. I had a researcher email me and say, hey, listen, can I go to the supermarket? I haven't had food in my house in a few days. Like, please don't email me and ask me that. Like, please eat. I never said this was that kind of situation. You're not in a sweatshop, So yes, you're very, there were a few times where it was like, throw your hands up. This isn't going to work. What made me keep going is that I think in the society we live in right now, this is just essential. And not only for people of the African diaspora, but for everyone, to just have an idea, because if we're looking at 20 years, I have to say roughly a very high percentage of the people featured in the book, I never heard of them, and they've done these groundbreaking things. So we see history repeating itself, where it's like, this is what's missing. So we're not talking about 1930, whatever. In 20 years, these people have done these groundbreaking things, and none of us have heard about them. In the age of technology, in the age of virtual online and TikTok, like you just said, and Facebook, why is this still happening? And we may not always have the answers to the whys, but we can always change the trajectory. Yeah. So yeah, that's what kept me going, is I felt like it had a purpose.
You told us that there are many people that you were not aware of. Who is the most fascinating of that group of people that you weren't aware of?
Oh wow, that's a hard one, since we're dealing with 20 years. I would have to go with each volume, but so here's one that stands out. There's two actually that stand out in my head. One, the Guggenheimer, which, as we know, is one of the biggest museums in New York City, arguably the world. They kind of set the tone for everything. Last year, they elected their first African-American woman as president and head of the Guggenheimer.
Ooh.
I didn't know that. No, I mean, and let's be honest, that's a big deal. It's the Guggenheimer, so she stands out immediately where I was like, wow, we have to really get this woman in this book. We have to tell. And you know what else was interesting about this is you're dealing with people who aren't celebrities, right? So there's not a lot of digital footprint. So we had to go off any article we saw, anything, we had to piece it together. But that person if I knew that, I would, oh wow, if I was a journalist, I would want to put that out there, but that's not happening. The second person is LAX, one of the biggest airports in this country. The president is an African-American woman. Never knew that. Well, I mean, and that's what you have to look forward to in the Melanoid Chronicles. People who you haven't even made the connection. No one's posted it. No one's advertised it. No one said, hey, listen, we're doing this great thing, which I would want to do. But I understand that, those are the two where I was like, wow, LAX. How many times have I been to LAX? I had no idea that this, woman who, and think about what that would do to a younger generation. Where they're like super cool, like this great museum or this airport that I've hopefully been to or want to go to one day. Everybody has LA dreams. Is someone who is, of the African diaspora. And if you're a child of the African diaspora, being excited and saying, wow, this person looks like me and they're running things. Think about what that does to your self-esteem. It's the psychology of it. It's not necessarily the stories. It's the idea behind the stories.
Yeah.
Where I can literally do anything.
I can absolutely understand how this can inspire kids who are, want to look up and say, oh, I want to dream, I want to do this, and know that it's possible because somebody like me is there already. Somebody like me opened that door for me. We're living in a time right now, and it worries me that, we're living in a time that it just seems like we're more and more fractured, apart on, class-wise and ethnically and racially. And I was somebody who heard Dr. King talk about his dream. I was alive and heard that. And I thought my dad sat down with me and said, I want you to hear this. And this is something that's wonderful for us. And I see that things are better.
It feels like we're going backwards.
Yeah.
It feels like we're going backwards.
How can the Melanoid Chronicles help us? How can it help us achieve that dream that Dr. King so eloquently told us about?
It's funny because I think it's exactly that. I think it's, in a society where unfortunately it seems like we're moving backwards, this will push us forward. I did an interview not too long ago and I made this point of, what you're seeing through society right now is that lack of history, that lack of, one thing about race in America, which is very difficult, is that I think the biggest problem is depiction and exposure. A lot of us aren't exposed to each other. And so we're only looking at depiction, and that's never a good thing. So, if you're only looking at, TV or media, which that's the world we live in, you look at the things that are posted on these social media sites, things like that are dealing with race that people are very insensitive about. That's going to be your idea of an entire culture of people, and it's not true. So in a world where I think you're getting more negative depictions of people, any race, and more problems with connecting and really be exposing ourselves to each other, not just online, but just good exposure. I want Melanoid Chronicles to be a connection. I want it to be that bridge. Where it's okay, if you are not, because let's say, for example, you are Caucasian American. Sorry, I'm used to saying that. My mom always told me to stay away from black and white. So if you're a Caucasian and you've never really had any positive exposure or none at all to another race, this can be difficult for you, and vice versa. I know several communities of people of the African diaspora where they'll tell you they've never met a Caucasian person before. So everybody's ideas are slanted. In a world of technology where we're supposed to be getting closer, it's actually drawing us further apart.
Mm-hmm.
So I want Melanoid Chronicles to be that bridge. And like I said, it's not just for members of the African diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
It's for everyone to see, okay, listen, you're growing up in an age of Black Lives Matter and all this anger and all of this, things have to, change immediately. Well, that's not a reality, but we can start building bridges. Mm-hmm. We can start putting it together where it's like, oh, hey, listen, if you're someone who hasn't been exposed to someone of the diaspora, here's some great people that you might want to know about.
Yeah.
Or if you are of the diaspora, hey, great, these are people that look like me that I didn't know anything about.
Right. Yeah. Do you think that is something that can help us I'm struggling for the word here, but
Okay.
but I mean, there's so much anger and real anger, and it comes from it's justified for a lot of folks. There's reasons why people are angry, but do you think if we can say, hey, yes, we want to elevate all people and let them know that they have opportunities, and by the way, it is happening. It's not where it should be, but it's happening. And do you think that this can give people hope that they can start to release some of the anger and move forward, knowing that, hey, we don't have to get this giant truck moving. We don't have to push this truck and get it going ourselves. It's already moving, and we can just move it faster.
Yeah, I mean, every problem is like a tree. It has its root. Mm-hmm. And I think the Melanoid Chronicles addresses that root. However, what I also think it does is, let's be honest, I'm not coming out for or against it. But if anything changes is going to be made, it's through politics. Mm-hmm. It's through government. It's through media. It's through science. It's through all of these things. So I don't want to use the word exposing, but revealing. Mm-hmm. Hey, listen, you want to make a really big change? Here's your big change, where identify with people who are like you. And we live in a world where you could read someone in the Melanoid Chronicles and go search them on Facebook and probably become their friend and connect with them and say, hey, listen, how did you become president of the Guggenheimer? How do I do that? Yeah. So then when you get into a position to affect change is when we start to see things change. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not saying that's the way, but it seems to be the way that it works. That's the system that we're in. Yeah. So if I've actually heard a lot of people of the diaspora say things like, oh, I don't vote because, regardless, it's just going to be some, whatever. And that's the wrong idea. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not saying voting is foolproof and it's 100%. Actually, I was a political science major. I know it's not. But at least getting your voice in the ring. Mm-hmm. Put yourself in the ring. So the idea that comes from, I don't want to use the word ignorance, but a lack of knowledge of, see these people that you're reading about, they all had to sacrifice. They all had to probably go into their stuff where they're like, not really a big fan, but I know that this is the best way that I can make change.
Yeah. You mentioned something that I don't think a lot of parents realize about reaching out to people in these positions. And it could be real hard for me to call the Guggenheim Museum and say, yo, I want to have your president on my podcast. That might get through, but if you're the mom or the dad of a really bright 7, 8, 9-year-old kid who's interested in art, having that kid write a letter to that president of the Guggenheim Museum, there's a really good chance that letter is going to get read and answered. And that would be thrilling for your kid. And it could also create a friendship that could open up some real doors down the line.
Really great doors.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So,
well, you know what? And also, and I'm glad, I love that you said that, because that was another spin that we put on the Melanoid Chronicles. Now, we don't have it for everyone, but at the end of everyone, the people that we could find the information on, at the end of every entry, has a contact. So even if you're just going to their Twitter and writing them a quick direct message or whatever. So we wanted to give that to the children. Mm-hmm. where it's like, hey, listen, again, I know I actually talk about my niece way too much, but, if she's like, well, I want to meet this X person who's, done all these great things in science, we give them a start.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, is realizing that you are, I think a lot of people in diaspora feel like they are either victims of a society, which makes sense, victims of a society that has oppressed them, and that's where our anger is coming from. That's where the anger comes from. I'm either a victim or I'm just not a part of it at all. And that's not true, because what you have are all these people who, in the midst of all of this adversity, still manage to break barriers. Mm-hmm. So if you want to reach out to that person and figure out how that can become a great mentor experience, mm-hmm. that can, like you just said, open doors. The change doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't just fall out of the sky. You have to go through the back door. Yeah. You have to start slowly implementing mm-hmm. things into society that gives people the self-esteem, especially our children. And the idea that it's not, and again, I grew up in a world, I'm sure as you, where we would hear things here and there, but it didn't affect our daily lives. In the world of social media, it's constant. It's 24 hours of anger and hashtags mm-hmm. and all of those things where you never escape it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I can say, luckily, I didn't have that. Let's say I endured racism during the day, but I could go home to my family and have dinner at night. Right. And that was your break from it. There's no break from it. Mm-hmm. So we want Melanoid Chronicles to be that break in a positive way. Yeah.
Before we go, Zarinah, I told you about hearing Dr. King's dream. Mm-hmm. And there was another voice that I listened to. It was a late night talk show host here in Boston who was actually heard in 38 states. He was on one of those big, powerful radio stations. And every night he would have these really interesting guests on, and some of them were weird. They get captured by aliens and probed and all that kind of stuff. And it was just fun. But anytime someone would call up, his name was Larry Glick, and anytime someone would call up and go, Larry, I'm an Irish American, I'm an African American, I'm an Italian American, he would always stop them and he would say, nope, you are an American of African descent. You're an American of Irish descent. I hope that someday,
I actually love that.
I hope someday that that's the norm, that we don't have to say African American, Caucasian American. We can say American. And by the way, my family came from here or from there.
Right. I agree. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I'm going to start using it, by the way.
All right. Me and you will bring Larry back. Hey, Zarinah, tell everybody, please, where they can go to find out more about the Melanoid Chronicles and find out more about you.
Sure. So you can go to our website. It's AM, A as in Apple, M as in Mary, group, GROUP. LLC.biz, B-I-Z. So you can go there, and it's kind of the general website. But if you want to know specifically about the Melanoid Chronicles, you just do a / Melanoid Chronicles. If you want to contact us directly, /contact. If you'd like to email us, melanoid at same website, amgroup, LLC.biz. And you can reach us in any of those times. We have a lot of people. The ebook is being released very soon. So we have people subscribing via email. Like, hey, listen, let me know, so we'll send the link there. You can purchase the hard copy directly from the website. And then before I even give you a chance to purchase it, there's a very long explanation of our mission. So awesome. You can enjoy that, and you can read that as well. Or you just want to contact us for any reason, you can go to the contact page and you can reach out to us, and we'll get it immediately. So that's the way to contact us. And I hope to hear from everyone.
Well, we've had a really fun and enlightening and encouraging time speaking about the Melanoid Chronicles with our guest, Zarinah Hameen. Hey, Zarinah, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be today's sponsor, one of today's sponsors, Antoinette Trulio Martin. She'll be here to talk to us about her Becoming America series. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Zarinah Hameen. Please be sure to check out the Melanoid Chronicles. Also want to thank our sponsor, Once Upon an Upset, a great podcast from our friend Jessica Laurel Kane, and of course the Becoming America series by Antoinette Trulio Martin. I want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.